Good morning. It's wonderful to practice with you in this beautiful morning. I always find it almost effortless to settle into my body and mind during our Sunday Dharma service. How about you? I believe it's the energy that we create together. I hope attending our Dharma service is part of your weekly routine, where you can refresh yourself and be reminded of the peaceful state of mind that is innate us. But how can you continue to practice in our daily lives, where we face challenging situations, when we experience difficult emotions like anger, sadness, disappointment, depression, frustration, worry, and so on? And how can you practice in those situations and make our meditation practice continue seamlessly? In the verse 1 of chapter 3 practice in the One Buddhist scripture, our founding master Sotaesan says, the purpose of having you recite the essential dharmas of daily practice in the morning and evening does not lie in reciting simply the words. Rather, it is intended to help you grasp their meaning in your heart and assess them in your mind, reviewing them generally once a day, and more specifically, examining them each time you are faced with sensory conditions. The essential dharmas of daily practice serves as a guide for our daily practice. It consists of 9 items, and each encapsulating the essence of one Buddhist teachings. And today, I'd like to discuss the first 3. The mind is originally free from disturbance, but disturbances arise in response to sensory conditions. Let us restore the equanimity of our true nature by letting go of disturbances. I think it's on page 6 in our chant book. And the second and third items say that the mind is originally free from delusion and wrongdoing. Disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoing represents all the negative, unwholesome qualities of our mind that cause imbalance and suffering in our lives. Disturbance refers to any difficult or uncomfortable emotions, such as anger, jealousy, fear, resentment, or worry, etc. Delusion means clouded thoughts, like prejudice, bias, judgment, ignorance, or attached thoughts. Wrongdoings are unskillful behaviors that cause harm to ourselves and to others. Disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoings mostly arise together. Sometimes disturbance arises first, and delusion and wrongdoing follow. For example, let's say that when you were young, you had a bad experience with a bully who was tall and skinny and had blonde hair and wore a red ball cap. And if at some point in the future, if you encounter someone who resembles that description, then your body will automatically send you an alarm and you will freeze. Fear, disturbance arises. You might automatically associate that person in front of you with someone from your past, even though you know that it can't be the same person in your mind. Your mind becomes deluded. If you're aware of this at the moment, it may not develop into any wrongdoing. But if you are not aware and respond on autopilot, you may react unskillfully. You may even have impulse to harm that innocent person. And sometimes delusion arises first, followed by wrongdoing and disturbance. There's a saying that it's best not to shop for food when you're hungry. And you know why? Everything will look delicious, and you may end up having more than necessary. And similarly, it's wise not to pursue relationship when you're lonely, as loneliness can cloud your judgment and lead to unhealthy relationship choices. So understanding this mechanism and identifying disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoings in your mind helps you better understand what's going on in your mind and why you react to a certain sensory conditions in a certain way. Our mind is originally free from disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoing. This means they are not fixed in our minds, and therefore destined to disappear eventually. The strong emotions or stubborn habits can change. Our mind is originally free from them. This is the fundamental principle of our mind. Number one principle of our mind. Does it make sense to you? Do you believe that? Our mind is originally free from disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoing? So when I first learned this, it was life-changing. It fundamentally changed how I thought about myself. Like many of us, I struggled with self-doubt and the thought of not being good enough. However, these first three items of the essential dharmas of daily practice, which actually contain the dharma of Il-Won-Sang, this big one circle image, and the threefold practice, these three items made me believe that I am capable of breaking free from habitual patterns. And I am capable of every change. My perspective of myself shifted entirely toward optimism. I still find the thought of I'm not good enough arising, but now I know these thoughts are like these waves on the ocean. They arise and falls. The unnecessary thoughts, cloudy thoughts will disappear if I am aware of them and don't engage with them. And recently, neuroscience research found that our brain development doesn't stop at a certain age, as was previously believed. Our brain is not static or fixed in its potential. It can change throughout our entire lifespan. No matter how old you are, you can actually sculpt new healthy pathways in the brain and prune away old, unhealthy ones. Not just when you are young, but at any time. Whenever I read the articles of neuroplasticity, I think to myself, I knew this. It's nothing new to me. I knew this. No. However, it's not enough to simply understand this with our thinking mind. To have the strength to return to that place when you are upset or attached to something, we need to experience and confirm it ourselves. Then how can you experience the mind that is free from disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoing? How can you experience it? You know the answer. The answer is simple. We need to quiet our minds, quiet our thinking mind. Our minds are usually like a bottle filled with muddy water. It is clouded by various thoughts. And the bottle is always shaking, so never become clear. So when we practice meditation, we sit, focus our minds on Danjan, and just observe our thoughts come and go. In this way, we become separate from our thoughts. We become separate from our thoughts. In this awareness, the ego doesn't exist. And when you open your eyes slightly during meditation, you will feel like the universe just is, just manifest in front of you. You will realize there is no ego in this awareness. That we are not our thoughts or emotions in that space. You can then set an intention. I want to take refuge in this place. I want to return to this place. This is where I belong to. When you are angry or resentful, we feel like there is no other option but to be angry. We get stuck in their thoughts and emotions. And you think, how could you do that? How could you do that? You become slaves to our own thoughts and emotions. We suffer. It is only when we step back from our thoughts that we gain the power of choice. But pausing and taking just one step back, sometimes feel extremely difficult or even impossible when strong emotions or impulses are present. Meditation is important practice because it helps us develop faith in our original nature and gives us the power to pause the moment we are caught up in thoughts and emotions. But disturbances, delusion, and wrongdoing arise in response to sensory conditions. Sensory conditions refer to the objects our six sense organs contact. Our six sense organs, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. It's all up here. So you can understand them as anything that triggers certain thoughts or emotions. Everything you see, hear, smell, touch constitutes your sensory conditions. So why disturbances arise? If our mind is originally free from disturbance, why do disturbances arise? The verse doesn't say that disturbances arise because of sensory conditions. What does it say? It says it arises in response to sensory conditions. Right? In response to sensory conditions. If your partner says something and annoys you, it is not that your partner made you upset. Right? Rather, some thought in your mind responded to that sensory condition. Sensory conditions are just conditions. They are neither good nor bad. It is our labeling and perspective that makes something good or bad. This is the second principle that the essential dharmas of daily practice teaches us. The key to how we respond to a sensory condition lies within us. Let me share a story. This is a famous story in Korean Buddhism. A long time ago, there was a monk named Won-hyo in Korea. Have you heard this story? A monk Won-hyo? He was on a journey to China to study Buddhism. And one night, he stopped to rest in a cave. In the middle of the night, Won-hyo woke up and felt very thirsty. In the darkness, he found a bowl filled with water, and he drank it and felt very refreshed. Satisfied, he went back to sleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he saw that the bowl was actually an old human skull. And the water inside was very dirty, really. He was so disgusted that he almost vomited. But then he had a deep spiritual insight. Last night, when he thought the water was clean, he felt fine. But now, knowing the truth, his mind made him feel sick. This experience taught him a powerful lesson about our mind. Our thoughts shape our experience. After this, he decided not to continue his journey to China. Instead, he returned to Korea. He became a great teacher and helped spread Buddhism in Korea. Once you are caught up in a thought like, this is dirty, this is bad, he or she is wrong, I am right, it's very difficult to shift your perspective. Think about someone you feel you could never forgive. Sometimes taking just one step back from such thoughts can take an entire lifetime. But if you understand those emotions are not originally fixed in your mind, then you have a way out. You can pause and breathe and realize you don't need to be stuck in old ways of seeing that. Then a thought may arise. I guess he could do that. Disturbance, delusion, wrongdoings arise in response to sensory conditions, not because of sensory conditions. The key is within us. The next line says, let us restore the equanimity of our true nature by letting go of disturbances, delusion, and wrongdoing. Then how can you let go of the disturbances? When I was a student in Yongsan University, I wondered why Mr. Sote-san didn't explain, why he didn't add one line of how to. Isn't it the most important part? Now I realize that if you understand that your mind is originally free from disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoing, but they arise in response to sensory conditions, then you already know the answer about how to let go of them. However, in the chapter of Dharma of Timeless Sun, or Zen, sun is a Korean word for Zen or meditation. In that chapter of our Dharma book, Master Sote-san kindly gives us a more detailed instruction about this, about how to let go of disturbances. And he says, each and every time you are in contact with a sensory condition, do not forget to keep the thought in mind that an opportunity for practice has arrived. All that is taking a suitable measure of only whether or not you are affected by that sensory condition. When you find yourself, excuse me, when you find yourself experiencing uncomfortable feelings or emotions, remember first that this is the opportunity for practice and growth. Not something bad had happened. This means being willing to face the darker parts of ourselves, rather than ignoring or running away from them. This takes courage. And always only measure whether or not you're affected by the sensory condition. Don't berate yourself when you see your shortcomings continue to arise, or when you make an unskillful choice repeatedly. Don't blame yourself. Don't beat up yourself. Shame doesn't help us learn new behaviors and change. This is another principle of the mind. Shame doesn't help. So turn your gaze inward and see your suffering clearly, and be compassionate with yourself. I believe this message is contained in the word only, in this phrase. Only just observe yourself and don't blame yourself. Don't feel guilty. Taking suitable measure means carefully observe your mind with the eyes of a Buddha. Be with your awareness, not with your thoughts or emotions. And simply observe whether your mind is being pulled by sensory conditions or whether it's maintaining its centeredness. Taking a suitable measure if you're pulled by sensory condition or remain still. If you're pulled by the sensory conditions, you lose this battle, don't blame yourself. The only thing that you should be concerned about is when you are not even aware that you were pulled by a sensory condition. The journaling your practice with your sensory conditions can greatly help to support you be more mindful in this practice. You may think that sitting meditation is the most important practice. But the authentic definition of meditation, Zen or Sun, is the practice of attaining freedom of mind through gaining awakening to one's true nature, which is originally free from discrimination or attachment. This is the definition of Sun, Zen meditation. In Won Buddhism, this is called timeless meditation. The essential dharmas of daily practice is a guide to this timeless meditation practice. I hope you remember these 3 items and review them each time you are faced with sensory condition and attain freedom of mind. Thank you for listening.